Come here, Spike. Come here.
Have you lost your hand?
All right. Go give it to your mama. Give it to Ava Page. She wants it.
Mary, you can take him to school. He's a gator.
There's a baby gator. There's a yip in the yard. Oh, what is it?
It's going to claw the baby's eyeballs out.
You want to hold him, Ava Page? All right, let's take him outside.
What's wrong, Dave? This is what he
That right there is what Florida freedom is all about. I am Florida man Dave Rubin. This is the Rubin Report on May 23rd, 2024. We're live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, and local. Share, subscribe, tap that notification bell. And starting today, I believe it comes out at 6 p.m., we have a new weekly newsletter for all of you fine people. You just have to sign up at rubinreport.locals.com. It's absolutely free. We got some insider stuff, some personal stuff. You can help us guide the show a little bit, get to some stories that we weren't able to cover during the week, and much more. The best part of that video, this 4-year-old or so is walking in, scaring the mom in the kitchen with the gator, and somehow the gator's face touches like the 1-year-old. This could have ended, that could have been a very, very different video had that tape not been on correctly. But that is what's going on here in the free state of Florida. And even right now, just outside this very studio right here, we're in the process of chopping down some branches on the tree because I've had an iguana pooping in my pool. Not fun, but this is the price you pay for freedom, and it is a price well worth paying. Guys, it's a Thursday, so we are doing a RubinReport.locals.com community Q&A, so I got about 10 or 12 questions to get to all over the place from you guys, and we're going to talk about Winston Marshall, who was on the show a couple weeks ago. He did a talk at Oxford, a debate, I should say, at Oxford University with crazy Nancy Pelosi. We've got Andy Ngo and Dr. Phil, Jen Psaki, Mayorkas, Biden, Karine Jean-Pierre, all the usual cast of characters, and we'll get to it in just a moment after I tell you about Grand Canyon University. Guys, GCU, a private Christian university located in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes that we're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity, and the American dream starts, of course, with purpose. GCU equips you to serve others in ways that promote human flourishing and create a ripple effect of transformation for generations to come. By honoring your career calling, you impact your family, your friends, and your community. Change your world for good by putting others before yourself to glorify God. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With over 330 academic programs as of December 23, GCU meets you where you are and provides you a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University, private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu/Dave. So I wanted to get to this first clip earlier in the week. We couldn't quite get it to fit in the rundowns that we were doing, but this is really wonderful. Winston Marshall, who many of you know, he was once in Mumford Sons, and he was basically canceled, although he doesn't like the word canceled. But all he did, it's so incredible. And Mumford Sons was a huge band in the sort of early to mid 2000s, around 2010 or so. All he did was post a link to Andy Ngo's book. We're going to show you some clips of Andy Ngo in just a second. It's completely separate from this. It's just a total coincidence, actually. But all he did was post a link to Andy Ngo's book, which was exposing the far left and Marxist communist connection with Antifa and really the Democrat base, the progressives. He posted a link to it and said, hey, this is interesting. Anyway, all hell breaks loose. He ends up, he's no longer in the band, but he is now an incredible fighter for freedom across the pond in the UK. And he debated Nancy Pelosi over at Oxford Union. And well, enjoy.
Words have a tendency to change meaning. When I was a boy, woman meant someone who didn't have a cock. Populism has become a word used synonymously with racist. We've heard ethno-nationalist, with bigot, with hillbilly, redneck, with deplorables. January 6th has been mentioned. A dark day for America indeed. And I'm sure Congresswoman Pelosi will agree that the entire month of June 2020, when the federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon was under siege and under insurrection by radical progressives, those too were dark days for America. Yes?
There is no equivalence of it. So that, yes.
So you don't agree? And it's fine, you don't agree, that's fine.
But it is not like what happened on January 6th, which was an insurrection incited by the President of the United States.
Today, particularly in America, the globalist left have become the establishment. I suppose for Ms. Pelosi to have taken this side of the motion, she'd be arguing herself out of a job. He didn't accept the 2020 elections, and he should have. So should Hillary in 2016, so should Brussels, and so should Westminster in 2016, and so too should Congresswoman Pelosi, instead of saying the 2016 election was, quote, hijacked. Quote, hijacked. Thank you.
That doesn't mean that we don't accept the results of it.
Okay.
Okay, first off, the accent, that Queen's British accent, is just, I talk about that with Douglas Murray all the time. As Phoenix just said to me, you're automatically 25% smarter if you have that accent. It's just perfect. But isn't that interesting there at the end, as Nancy Pelosi is still claiming that the 2016 election was hijacked? You know, if you hijack a plane, that means you commandeer the plane. You are now in charge of the plane. The pilot isn't. You hijack a boat, okay? We know what happens. So they are basically, she's saying, but we accept the results. What the high hell does that mean? They spent 4 years with 2 ridiculous impeachments, trying to undermine him at every level, calling him illegitimate and everything else. She, of course, still downplays the violence of the summer of 2020. And by the way, it wasn't just the federal courthouse in Portland that burned. It was blue cities all over the country that were burning. Ask some of the people who own mom and pop shops with glass windows that got destroyed all over New York City, Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles, et cetera, et cetera. I lived in LA at the time, and Ventura Avenue, which is the main drag there, every single store either destroyed or had to close up, board up, and write Black Lives Matter on the thing so that they wouldn't be destroyed, even though they were still destroyed, right? Like, everyone knows exactly what happened. But no, when the Democrats cause violence, when the Democrats instigate all of this lunacy, somehow they can skate by. But Donald Trump, who specifically said to people, go to the Capitol, but make sure you're peaceful and everything else, that's an inciting insurrection. I did it. I just did it. Inciting insurrection. Inciting an insurrection. Lordy. Anyway, what you see with all of this, of course, is that the left somehow, as Winston points out, the global left is now the establishment, particularly in America. And that is why they can get away with all this stuff. That's why Nancy Pelosi and Maxine Waters and AOC, they can call for, in essence, violence against people who go against them, get in their face, don't let them find any peace at restaurants, go to their homes, et cetera, et cetera. And then they can always play the victim. Well, Andy Ngo, who, as I just mentioned, Winston was canceled for just for linking to his book. Andy Ngo has been on the forefront of trying to expose what has been going on between Antifa and BLM and the Democrats and all of these things as a movement really to upend America itself. I don't think anyone has done a better job at it. He has paid the price. He has been attacked repeatedly. He had death threats. He has had to move repeatedly. There are things that are not public that the guy has gone through. Anyway, he went on Dr. Phil's show and talked a bit about that.
This has gotten really personal with you. Antifa has actually tried to kill you on 2 different occasions. What are you saying is so threatening to them?
So I try through my journalism to inform the public about the threat of violent far-left extremism in the United States. We know very much about the violent far right, but when it comes to the other side, there's actually a vacuum that exists. So what I did as an independent journalist was to go out with my mobile camera to record what was happening at some of these so-called direct actions and protests, which were branded around things that sounded really wonderful. Social justice, racial justice, Black Lives Matter. But the people behind it were actually espousing an ideology of violent revolution, a destruction of America, destruction of the rule of law. In 2020, they exploited the death of George Floyd to carry out acts of violence across the United States. This wasn't to the benefit of any Black communities. Instead, what we saw were Black businesses, homes, neighborhoods torched to the ground. 4 years later, many of these same strategies and tactics are now being used again at some of these university encampments.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the university encampments in just a second. I have to say, I've mentioned this once or twice on the show before, but when years and years ago, this is around 2017, when I was, quote, leaving the left, I did an event at Portland State University with Pete Boghossian, who you've seen on this show, and Christina Hoff Sommers. And we did an event there, and Andy Ngo was a student at the time at Portland State. And it was the first time that I ever did an event where there were mass protests, and they were saying that I was a homophobe, and Pete Boghossian was a misogynist, and Christina Hoff Sommers hates women, or something like, who the hell, or Pete was the white supremacist, and she was the misogynist. None of it made sense. But they tried to stop us. We had to have a police escort. They were pulling fire alarms, all of those things. And Andy was just a young student at the time. And I think it's important to note, because I'm so proud of the work that he's done over the past 8 or so years, and he has definitely paid the price for it. But he has been warning, as someone that went to a far left university in Portland, Oregon, right? Like the bastion of this craziness, that all of these kids were being taught by, in essence, Marxists and communists, being taught all of the wrong things, taught how horrible America is, told that they need trigger warnings and all of the rest of the nonsense, right? Safe spaces and everything else. And they are the ones who not only burned down parts of the country in 2020, but they are the ones right now who are calling for genocide and the rest of it on our college campuses. Andy talked a bit more about the institutional capture of some of our universities.
I was on the UCLA campus when they took down that encampment and interviewed Jewish students getting encircled on campus by these pro-Palestinian students. They would link arms and make circles around. They'd block them where they couldn't go to their classes. They were shoving them, pushing them, assaulting them, tearing their books away from them, and putting up all these banners, death to Jews, drawing stars of David on the ground, stomp here to kill a Jew, just all of these things that are intimidation. And administration is doing nothing about it, or very little about it, until finally they get kind of shamed into it. And my problem is these administrators and faculty members, some of them are right in there with them, in the encampments and the demonstrations with them, but they're not teaching critical thinking. They're not teaching these kids to say, wait a minute, where are you from? I don't know you, and how does this make sense? Let's unpack this and see what it is you're asking me to support. Why is that not being taught?
Because there's been institutional capture of American universities. This has been a long-time project of the far left. Many of the radical revolutionary terrorists of the 60s and 70s, after they were convicted and spent time in prison for their organized crimes, went on to become academics and continue to be in academia.
All right, so I know you've heard that sort of thing before. It's important that now that type of thing is getting to Dr. Phil's audience. This idea of institutional capture, that you got to give the left credit. You may hate what they've done, but you got to give them credit for doing it. For decades and decades, they put far left communists and Marxists and anarchists and the rest of it. They put them in positions of power, not only teaching kids, but in the administration. And now we are just seeing the fruits of it, right? That's why if you really think about what we've seen over the last couple months, as horrifically shocking as it is, it shouldn't be that surprising. Like seeing it, actually granularly seeing it, and all the awful things that they're doing and not letting Jewish students or professors on campus and burning the American flag. Like it's shocking to an extent when you see it, but it shouldn't surprise you that much because it's just the next obvious extension of what these people have sold. I want to connect this to something that we did the other day when I had James Lindsay co-hosting the show on Monday. James talked about how the country is basically, there's an attempted murder on the United States of America. Like everyone's sort of kind of right now like, oh my God, is this thing almost over? Is the country dying? And it's not that the country is terminally ill where there is nothing we can do, but there is an attempted murder that we are watching happening. The attempted murder partially is that our institutions were captured, so our young people were taught all the wrong things and that the country was bad and that their genitals don't match their gender and everything else. The attempted murder is also that we're letting all of these people in and we don't know what their beliefs are. The attempted murder is that we don't have basic law and order in our blue cities. We could go through the rest of it. The attempted murder is the endless printing of money to thus devalue money. There is an attempted murder. And until we deal with some of this stuff properly, the body will continue to die. Now, fortunately, in America, we have federalism. So the body has some different ways to use antibodies, because if you live in a state that is willing to fight, then things will be better. So I want to connect this to that alligator cold open. Because here in Florida, as you know, they tried to close down some roads a couple of weeks ago. They tried to close down the roads to Disneyland, which this is what the Hamas people are doing. They made it for 11 minutes and then they were moved. At a couple of the universities here in Florida, they tried to put up encampments. They were taken away immediately. The other thing that Ron DeSantis is doing right now here in Florida is not only are we having a tax holiday for the summer on a whole bunch of items to get people to go to parks, and we're reducing fees on things so that people will be outdoors and with family, and food and some items will be cheaper. We're also going to have red, white, and blue on our bridges, which is very triggering to the people over at CNN, because June is gay month and we've got to have gay bridges with gay people. Well, can gay people go across red, white, and blue bridges without spontaneously combusting? I guess we'll find out in June.
Well, summer kickoff is here, and whatever your summer plans are, I bet they aren't as free as Florida's. Wondering what I mean by that? Of course you are. Well, Governor Ron DeSantis has dubbed the summer Florida's Freedom Summer. Families can visit the state parks for free this coming weekend, and he's lifting sales taxes for the month of July on camping and fishing items. But his latest act of freedom? Well, if Florida cities want to light up their state-run bridges at night, they can only use the colors red, white, or blue. That means no rainbow for Pride Month, no black and green for Juneteenth, no orange for National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Florida Department of Transportation Secretary Jared Perdue posting on X, thanks to the leadership of Governor Ron DeSantis, Florida continues to be the freest state in the union. Freest state in the union, but not, I guess, when it comes to the colors that are used. And I guess why now? Well, those questions will have to wait for another day.
I don't know who that broad is, but what a pathetic embarrassment for a journalist. Like, that's supposed to be journalism you're doing right there. It's all good. It's all good, right? You don't have to light up bridges in activist colors for all of these different days. You know what unites us here in America? It is the red and the white and the blue. And I know that that is triggering to you because you think America's a bad place. So leave. If you don't love the country you're in, go to the country you love, whatever country that is, lady. What are we doing here? We're reducing fees so people can go camping and fishing and go to state parks and be outdoors. Isn't that so novel? Like, it's just absolutely insane. By the way, he's also reducing taxes on all sorts of things as it pertains to family-oriented things like strollers and diapers so that people will be encouraged to build families. Oh my God, it's so upsetting. We have more from the crazy leftist lunatics like the elderly man pretending to be president and his quote-unquote journalist at MSNBC who used to work for him, Jen Psaki, in just a second. But let me talk to you guys about American financing. Guys, in today's economic climate, many of us find ourselves facing the challenge of managing our monthly expenses. And high credit card interest rates can trap you in a cycle of debt with balances that persist month after month. Paying only the minimum each month means it could take years to become debt-free. Reach out to American Financing, a trusted partner in helping people achieve financial freedom. If you're a homeowner, they can tap into your home's equity and help you eliminate high-interest credit card debt. On average, their customers save $854 per month, equivalent to receiving a $10,000 annual raise. The process is straightforward and quick. You could close your loan in as little as 10 days, and by acting today, you might not have to pay your next mortgage payment. It costs nothing to see how much you can save. This opportunity to regain control of your finances is too significant to ignore. 866-890-8434. That's 866-890-8434. Or visit AmericanFinancing.net/Rubin. And now back to me. So let's jump over to some of the people who are constantly running cover for that far left establishment that, as we talked about earlier, has sort of become it's the Democrat Party, and it is the thing that is just running everything right now. Jen Psaki, who was obviously White House spokesperson, I thought she was probably the worst in history, and then thank God for Karine Jean-Pierre, who even leapfrogged her. It's rather extraordinary. She's on a book tour right now. We covered it the other day. She's already had to apologize for some things that she completely made up in the book, and they've already been removed. I suspect that means she didn't even write the book in the first place. But here she is being interviewed, talking about how the Kremlin and the Russians have been going after her. Russia, Russia, Russia.
And I became, because I was there when Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014, I became a prime target of the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin and their propaganda machine.
Explain what they did.
What they did is a lot of it was very gendered. They went after me and made up things I said that I never said. They had a nightly show on RT that was about me, that they broadcast in Russia and in Eastern European countries, where they made up a term. And I'm talking about people who worked in the Kremlin, like the government, made up a term called Psakiing, which they defined as making up something you didn't know.
Yes, that is Psakiing. I wish I had come up with that myself. I always said Jen Psaki because it reminded me of Sookie from True Blood, but that has nothing to do with your gender. You were the White House spokesperson, so people were calling out your bullshit. But of course, you're just such a victim. It was gendered. They were attacking me over my gender. No, they weren't. You're terrible. You're not good at your job. You weren't good at your job when you were at the White House, and you're an embarrassment to journalism. Unfortunately, we're only going to show you a 6-second clip. I wish we had an 8-second version of it, but for some reason it's cut off. But here she is with that interviewer, who also is not a journalist. What's her name? Kara Swisher. She's just an embarrassing, ridiculous lefty, asking Jen if she thinks she's a journalist. And it cuts off just a tiny bit too early because they start laughing in her face.
You switched to journalism, essentially. Would you think you're a journalist?
Yes.
Okay.
Even her own audience doesn't believe it. I wish we had the longer version of that. She is not a journalist. Jen Psaki, you are not a journalist. You work for a giant corporation to spread Democrat progressive nonsense and propaganda. If you would like to discuss that personally, we can do an hour live stream on my channel, or I will gladly show up to Rockefeller Center and tell you that to your face. You are a liar and a propagandist. You also, as White House press secretary, secretly worked with big tech to silence people, and you admitted it. You potentially should be in jail. And speaking of people who should probably be in jail, here's video of Alejandro Mayorkas, who has been, as you know, impeached by the House, not the Senate. It hasn't gotten through the Senate. No, did I get that backwards? By the House, not the Senate. He's in charge of the border. Well, you know, Biden's supposed to be in charge of the border, but he's given it to this guy because of the eyebrows, which sort of look like a fence. Defenses work, I don't know. And here he is, and it's he's trying to do some stuff to keep us safe, and maybe he's doing it, maybe he's not, who knows, but look at his eyebrows.
Bottom line is you were in charge of keeping us safe. And do you think we are safe with how porous the border has become? That's not saying it's all your fault. I'm just saying that are we safer now than we were before 9/11?
I would say three things, Anil. One, I'm incredibly proud of the men and women of the United States Border Patrol that risk their lives every day to
sure
keep
you are,
Americans
but are we safer?
safe and secure.
Are we safer
Number
now?
one. Number two, our screening and vetting capabilities are stronger than they ever have been. And three, the reality is, Neil, that we, and not just the United States alone, but Western countries are in a heightened threat environment, especially after the October 7th terrorist attacks by Hamas against Israel. That has only elevated the threat environment in Western countries, and that is why we are as vigilant as we are 24/7 in keeping our country safe. Neil, we took action a long time ago, and migration
this was
is
just
a very
announced in the
dynamic
last week.
phenomenon, and we are seeing the results that take time to take hold.
Guys, you want to see how vigilant we are? You want to see how tough that screening is? Here's our southern border yesterday.
Massive. They let him through. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. America!
That seems pretty tight, right? I mean, we definitely know who all those guys are and where they're going and what they're doing and whether they brought fentanyl across or whether they have weapons or they want to kill us or anything like that. I mean, what an absolute embarrassment. The question was, are we safer? Number one, I'm proud of border control. Okay, that's not an answer. And by the way, you're the one that's handcuffed them to stop them from doing their job. And then you stop even state border control like Texas, you stop them from doing their job. Number two, screening is stronger than ever. Do I need to show you that video again? If that's stronger than ever, then what the high hell was going on 6 years ago? And yes, there is a heightened threat, so perhaps we should be doing a little something about it. But we are governed by a bunch of incompetent morons, mostly people who were hired for all of the wrong reasons, usually as it relates to their genitals and or their skin color. That's a fine segue to show you a video of Karine Jean-Pierre basically telling Americans to fuck off who actually went ahead and, didn't get into debt to go to college or just didn't go to college altogether. Suck it up and pay for that Hamas kid $300,000 in debt to go to Columbia.
Then is the White House's message to those Americans who did not attend college for a variety of reasons, perhaps, including perhaps that they didn't want to take on all the debt that went with it right now, that they feel like in some form they are responsible for allowing those who did not to pay their fair share.
So look, here's the thing. This is a president who has been very clear about making sure that he's building an economy that leaves no one behind, right? Making sure that
being left behind, the ones who didn't get support because they didn't go to college.
I hear your question, but this is, if you look at what the president has done more holistically over the past 3.5 years, he has tried to build an economy for everyone.
Oh, it's just meaningless. Every word that comes out of that Muppet's mouth is completely meaningless. So think about it. If you right now, if you're 19, 20 years old and you went to a trade school or you got an internship or whatever, you worked in your family's business or whatever it might be, you just kind of did it right and you didn't get hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt to learn how to be a terrorist. Your tax dollars are now bailing out kids who went to Columbia and to UCLA and to Syracuse and all of these hyper expensive schools where they learn all of the wrong things and most likely will try to come for more of your money as the years go by. But what's her answer to that? Well, the president's building the economy inside out and upside down, and an economy that works for everybody. And we're printing money. And we showed you that video yesterday. What did we do? What did this administration do? According to Kamala Harris, we dumped trillions of dollars on the street. You guys were walking around. I walk the dog. I have yet to find trillions of dollars just sitting there. All right, we got one more from these clowns over at MSNBC. This is Stephanie Ruhle, and here she is because what they have to do at all times in mainstream media is run cover for a man with dementia and his merry band of communist lunatics. So here she is with an economic explainer trying to tell you that actually things are going quite well.
And now a new report from the Fed shows people are still struggling to cover day-to-day expenses, even as inflation has slowed. But some big consumer brands are beginning to take action. Target says it is cutting prices on 5,000 essential items, things like milk, butter, pet food. Wendy's is now offering a $3 breakfast deal, and rivals like McDonald's are offering new, lower-priced value meals. Here to discuss, an old friend of mine, Austin Goolsbee, president and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. We need an economic explainer. People are confused, they're exhausted, but they're also doing quite well. So I want to start with prices. They've been an issue for everyone. What is your take when you hear about big consumer brands actually cutting prices?
Good, but...
Good. Yeah. It may be true. I will grant you that it may be true that Target is going to cut prices on things, but prices have gone way up. So now they are cutting prices and maybe they will match where they used to be. But again, this is one of those things. You do not need to read a report on this, and you certainly don't need to watch mainstream media to figure it out. Go to your local grocery store. Go to your local grocery store, and you tell me what's going on over there. Does a pound of beef cost more or less? Does a dozen eggs cost more or less? Does whole milk cost more or less? We know all of these things are up. And then you take the other one that I always talk about, which is just the interest rates. Are interest rates higher or lower? Interest rates, when Biden came in, were 2.5%, maybe 3%, and now they're 6.5%, 7%, even more. They're projecting they'll go up to 8% and even more. So people are paying more for the basics that they need, food, and then they are also being unable to buy a home, which creates generational wealth because the interest rates are so high. But congratulations, you'll get a $3 breakfast at Wendy's. That's so exciting. It's just absolute. They don't want you to see the things that you can see in your life. That's what it is. And of course, they also have this shrinkflation cop-out, because what they're doing is they're making the products shrink. So you're getting less of things and paying the same price. And wages simply haven't caught up with inflation. So as inflation goes up, if your dollar amount that you're bringing in every week, if that just stays the same, right? If inflation's not going up, then okay, you're apples to apples. But if inflation goes up, your dollar is worth less. So your paycheck is worth less each time. We know these things are happening. You don't have to be a genius to figure it out. And now we've got an ad about debt because it kind of works. Guys, getting in debt is so easy, especially when Democrats are in charge. Getting out, well, the system's set up so we don't. The anxiety, the stress, it can be soul crushing. I get all that. And I'm here to say you don't have to do it alone. There's a way out. Help is available thanks to PDS Debt. PDS Debt has customized options for anyone struggling with credit cards, personal loans, collections, or medical bills. If you're making payments every month on your debt and balances aren't going down, this program is for you. PDS Debt provides options that consolidate your debts into one low monthly payment. Everyone with $10,000 or more in eligible debt qualifies, and there's no minimum credit score required. Bad and fair credit is accepted. Save thousands in interest fees. Pay off your debt in the fraction of a time. PDS Debt is a top-rated company on Google and has an A+ rating on the Better Business Bureau. PDS Debt cares about helping you get out of debt. Check out all their reviews and see how many mention PDS Debt employees by name. It's incredible. Get a free debt analysis right now at pdsdebt.com/Rubin. It only takes 30 seconds. That's pdsdebt.com/Rubin, pdsdebt.com/Rubin. And now back to me. All right, let's jump into a Rubin Report .locals.com community Q&A. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, we have a new newsletter coming out tonight. It'll come out Thursdays at 6 p.m. It's absolutely free. You just have to sign up for an account and you will get the newsletter and find out all sorts of other interesting things. Olaf says, another county in Oregon voted to join Idaho this week. Do you think that they will ultimately be successful in their quest as a resident of Washington State? I hope so. So I think we have an image here. So this has been going on. We should be covering this more. But what you're seeing there is this greater Idaho movement, that there are many counties, you're looking at the eastern counties, the bright red ones there, of Oregon, who basically don't want to be part of Oregon anymore. They want to join Idaho and change what the map quite literally would look like. There's something interesting here. I think we've got some info from the New York Post. The guys got me something here. There's a headline from the New York Post, thanks. 13th consecutive Oregon county approves measure to secede and join Greater Idaho. Another right-leaning county in eastern Oregon has voted to secede from the Democrat-run state and join neighboring Idaho, according to reports. Crook County residents passed the measure by a 53% majority Tuesday, making it the 13th county in the state to sign on to the movement known as Greater Idaho. Look, this is what America is all about. You have a chance to affect things at the ballot box. You have a chance to live in a place that's congruent with your ideals and the way you want to live and your values and things of that nature. And for those people that are living in that eastern half of Oregon, and they've had it with the direction Oregon is going. Let's not forget Portland, which is almost ground zero for all of the lunacy in America. That's one of the biggest cities in Oregon. If they don't want anything to do with that, and they've had it with all of the problems over there, well, then congratulations. Well, I guess you could have moved to Idaho. That would be one option. But if you can get a whole bunch of people in your community to start voting on it, I don't see why this thing can't work. Now, the federal government won't be happy about it. The Democrats will call it some sort of secession movement and insurrection and all of that stuff. But I am for people doing everything they can to correct the problems with the places that they live. And sometimes maybe that is a redraw of the map. I'd love to know what people of Idaho think of that, the OG Idaho people. Are they like, okay, we want some more of these people because they're like-minded, or do we want things the way they are, or they're afraid it's going to bring in too many, marginally sane people from Oregon? I don't know. So we'll keep an eye on that story for sure. Miss Misty says, the purpose of life is not to be happy, but to matter, to be productive, to be useful, to have it make some difference that you lived at all. That's Leo Rostin. I attempt to live this every day of my life. Do you? Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that I talk about with Jordan, with Jordan all the time, that Jordan Peterson talks about quite often, which is that too many people think that the point is happiness. You should just do what makes you happy. And we can all think of things that make us happy or give us immediate pleasure or all of those things. And it's not that there is something wrong with being happy. There's nothing wrong with pleasure and everything else. But if you just aim to that over time, that really doesn't build happiness. What builds happiness is a long-term project, right? If you aim for something, right? Like, this is what I want to do in my life. I want to own a company. I want to be a great father. I want to be a politician. I want to be a shoe cobbler, whatever it is. But you aim towards that and you look at it holistically, because it's not just that. It's then, okay, what kind of family am I going to have? All of these different things. If you aim toward that and you go to that every day, I think over time you become happy. That's kind of how it worked for me. I was like, when I was in high school, I wanted to be the host of The Tonight Show. Somehow, after all of these years now, I graduated high school in '94, right? So it's, 30 years ago this month, in effect. I aimed at something, I worked really hard for it, and then I built something really cool. I built a couple businesses, I got in a good relationship, I have kids, I have a family, I'm doing all right financially, et cetera, et cetera. And then that brings happiness, because if you wake up every day like, oh, I have something to do that I kind of enjoy, then happiness is the offshoot of finding the purpose. So you find the purpose first, and then the happiness comes along. Colorado says, with all the luxuries, progress, and freedoms we have as Americans, I think something should be required as a rite of passage for members of the generations coming of age to see and realize that our lives and standard of living are not for granted, an experience beyond mere book knowledge. What can we do on an individual and family, what can we do on individual and family levels to pass on to young people, perhaps ourselves as well, that America is not the norm in the world, especially if we can't afford to go abroad to a developing country lacking what we have? This is a great question, and it's connected actually to some of the clips we showed earlier when Andy was talking about the institutions being captured. And when you see all these young people that think America is bad and capitalism is bad and the founding of this most magical place ever, that was somehow evil and based in slavery and everything else. I don't know exactly what, there's a lot of people now talking about that we should have sort of mandatory conscription, that you'd have to serve in the army to some extent. I don't know that is quite right. But what if we had a mandatory year of civil service, which could be done in many, many ways? You could potentially go to the Army or the Navy or something, or you could work in your community and help either clean up your community or build gardens or do other work with old people, work with young people. I mean, there's a gajillion things, but basically have sort of a gap year before college. And by the way, you don't have to go to college. We've also put too much emphasis on that. But if there was some way to get people to really connect that their lives matter, and that if they are a good person, that they can affect the things on the ground in their community, then I suspect when times get a little weird, that people would be less inclined to burn down the Target in their community, or less inclined to, ransack the Pep Boys or Best Buy. So you have to connect people with the places that they live. I think that's one way. Maybe you could do you could probably do that. I wouldn't want the government to do this, but if you had enough nonprofits funded by the right people, you could send more young people abroad to different places. Like, go see what it's like to live in places where there isn't running water. Go see what it's like to live in places that have all sorts of strife and all of the problems that we no longer have, although I think we're kind of importing them right now. See a little bit of it on your own, and then maybe you might realize that when you're bitching and moaning on TikTok about how bad capitalism is while you're drinking your Starbucks latte, that perhaps you missed the point. Heather says, Dave, I know you love culinary questions, so here's mine. I recently decided to move away from my vegetarian lifestyle because I need more protein in my diet. I haven't cooked meat in over 12 years. What are your suggestions for a cut of meat that are delicious and relatively easy to prepare sans outdoor grill? I'm a bit of an amateur / home chef, so I'm all in on marinades and rubs and the like. The easiest cut of beef to cook that you basically cannot screw up, and it does not take a long time. Usually I do it on the grill, but you can definitely throw it in the oven. You can grill it in the oven. You can even bake it in the oven, is skirt steak. Skirt steak is, because it's basically thin, it's pretty soft and chewy. You're not going to overcook it because it really only needs, like if I do it on the grill, I like a simple rub. So like a salt and pepper rub, maybe a little garlic powder. You can get something a little fancier if you want, or you can marinate it. You can throw it in some barbecue sauce, or you can splash on the barbecue sauce after. Or sometimes what I do is once I grill it, just for the last minute, I'll, kind of paint. You get one of those paint brushes, a meat brush, and you just paint on some barbecue sauce at the end. But you can bake it. Again, you don't have a grill, so it's okay. But basically, what I do is grill it at about 450 and literally 3 minutes on each side. You want to take it out of the fridge before so it gets to room temp for about a half hour. That way it'll cook somewhat evenly, right? So you're not going to be totally raw inside and charred on the outside. But if you just want to bake it, 450, you don't even have to flip it really. Just just don't put it directly on the pan. Put it on something with, like grill marks or something. And I'm telling you, you cook it for 10 minutes, 400, 450, and you will be very happy, simple. You will not overcook it. It will not be underdone. It will be just right, and you will be very happy. Casa Ferre says, have you ever wondered if Bill Maher could vote for Trump if January 6th hadn't played out the way it did, if the media hadn't turned the riot into an insurrection? That's always his go-to when anyone points out Biden's failing policies. It's always, yeah, but what about Trump not conceding the election results, yada, yada, yada. It's a good question because that is quite literally what he brought up when I sat down with him on Club Random. It slightly came up when I did Real Time. We've shown you a lot of clips of him in the last couple of days. I think one of the clips that we showed you was him with Megyn Kelly, and in effect, he did that again when she kind of was like, things are a little bit better now, and then he gets back to the insurrection. I suspect not, actually. I suspect that there would always be something because he's really doing his darndest to plant that flag and say, I am the liberal. Liberalism has always been associated with the Democrat Party. You are the jackals trying to take over, but I am trying to stand my ground. As I've been saying, I think that's an honorable position to take. At some point, if you keep voting with the people who are destroying all of the things that you believe in, right? You believe, he talks about this, I believe in liberalism. It's an atheist. It's a leap of faith to believe that liberalism works. It's a leap of faith to believe anything works. You see the results of it over time. And now we're seeing some of the limits of it because of the primacy they place on tolerance. So I suspect not, but I would hedge that by just saying one thing. If it had been Ron DeSantis and not Trump, so you have to remove some of the Trump stuff for just a second, I think his arguments would really, really seem like bananas thin. I know they seem really thin to you guys, and I give him a long leash on this stuff. But at the end of the day, if it was November, if it's this coming November and it had been DeSantis versus Biden, like what would he be hanging his hat on? Because then the insurrection thing doesn't work at all. So you're right, like there might be some way around it. But here we are, and it's Trump. David says, Dave, how do you find the time to do all you do and keep it in order and on schedule? I mean, you do the show, you fly all over the place, you cook and you garden, you're a business entrepreneur with Locals, Rumble, and now your own tequila brand. You play basketball regularly, and you have 2 kids, a dog, and David. I'm exhausted just writing this. Tell the truth. Does David have a huge whiteboard in the kitchen with everything color-coded and planned ahead of time? We should have taken a picture of it. We do have a massive whiteboard. It's actually in the laundry room, but that has like everybody's schedules and what the kids are eating and all of that. So yes, there is a massive whiteboard in there. Adi takes care of my calendar, and my phone is constantly telling me where I have to be and when I have to be there. Generally speaking, I like being busy. It sort of gets to that earlier question about purpose. So like in the morning, Adi sends a text message out to our entire Rubin Report staff. It lays out what the plans are on the day. And then sometimes if I see a gap here or there, I'm like, oh, I should catch up on this call or that call, or I try to figure out when I can work out. I'm usually better at that in the morning. But but yeah, we're super, super busy. But then, you know, when I shut down, usually, I mean, last night I'm playing basketball on Wednesdays now 6 to 9, so I'm pretty beat. But like when I shut down on an average night at about 8 o'clock and I just put on TV for a little bit, you know, I'm not even paying attention that much, or I'm watching, you know, I watch the things that I used to, I literally watch the things that I watched in 1989. I watched Seinfeld, Golden Girls, and The Simpsons. That's pretty much it. And I watch the episodes from back then. I haven't seen a new Simpsons episode in forever. It's crazy that that's still on, actually. But I like being busy. And fortunately, I'm blessed enough between David and my team here, I'm blessed enough to be around people that all are good at what they are doing. They're professionals. Nothing falls through the cracks. And that is just a function of trying to build something the right way, I suppose. Andrew says, do you think it's possible for Biden to resign before the election, thus making Kamala the first black president, and the Dems take credit for it? Then at the DNC, they put some other shill in his place. Yes, I think anything is possible. I truly, truly mean that. There is nothing that they could not do right in front of our eyes, and the entire machine would buy it. So could they, look, what could happen? It is possible that Biden could just fall down the stairs today. Not even die, but he could break his hip, and then congratulations, 25th Amendment, Kamala's president, and then they would roll into July, which is the convention, and it'll be, you know, it's basically 2 months from now, and they're gonna have to figure out what to do, and they could be like, all right, well, we know there's no chance in high hell we can win with her, so we have to get rid of her, and they will get rid of the black woman just like that, and the media will run cover for him, and they would stick Gavin Newsom in, and they'll have the rich white guy replace the black woman, and it would be the ultimate irony, but I would not put it past them. So I just think anything, especially when you factor in the age and the way Joe Biden is breaking down, and the more that the numbers come out, you know, that's why we keep showing you these poll numbers, and you know I'm not a huge poll guy. They sort of show you trends more than anything else, but as the polls seem to show more momentum to Trump, and as you see more and more people from different walks of life, entertainment and Hollywood and sports, come out for Trump, and as you see no momentum about Biden and only the corporate people at MSNBC backing him, and you see all the disaffected libs kind of like, maybe I could vote for Trump. And then if Trump brings on someone like Tulsi, the machine will do what the machine's got to do. So I think, I'm just telling you, I think anything's possible. And if you are watching any other person that does what I do tell you they know what's going to happen, they are just completely lying. Mitchell says, looks like I'm going to be in Long Island once a month. Any dining recommendations from a former New Yorker? Oh my, unfortunately, I don't get back to Long Island that often. I think maybe I can next month. Oh man, well, you're going to be in Long Island once a month. Well, you got to talk like this, okay? And you're going to have orange juice, and you know, when you pull a pen out of a drawer, it's a drawer, not a drawer. Mario's Pizza on Jericho Turnpike. I think it's around exit 43 on the Long Island Expressway. Great pizza over there. I don't even remember other Long Island foods. I mean, just anywhere. You go to Long Island, you have a pizza or a bagel, or have a pizza bagel. You'll be very happy, I promise you. Hay says, hey Dave, I'm curious who you believe will take over the reins of the WEF. Will it be one of the heads of the big bank consortium or a former country leader like Boris Johnson? I don't even think it matters. I think it could be somebody like Boris Johnson. It seems like maybe it would be Tony Blair, former prime minister of the UK also, as well as Boris Johnson. It does, in a weird way, it does not matter. The group is so bizarrely shady. They have all sorts of power across all sorts of countries and at virtually every layer of society. They have people in every which way, from Justin Trudeau and all of these people. I don't know. It doesn't matter who the figurehead is. The more important thing is that we just keep realizing that we are sovereign nations, and the World Economic Forum's decisions over us have nothing to do with us. They have no power over the United States unless our leaders grant them that power, which our leaders don't even have the right to do that. But if our leaders just acquiesce the sovereign rights of our citizens and our borders, then we hand them that power. But the World Economic Forum has no power over you. It's hard for people to understand that. You know, you see these conferences and they say all these things and these estimated goals of carbon emissions, and these people are going to do this. And okay, you could say whatever you want, but we still have a constitution in the United States, and it doesn't say anything about giving power over to the World Economic Forum, which is why we need leaders who actually believe that our country is good, that our founding documents are good, because we have the force field. We really have the force field that very few countries have to protect our free speech, to protect our individual rights, and protect our nation from being overtaken by globalists, which in some ways, what was the whole purpose of the founding of the United States? We didn't want a king to rule over us. Well, the World Economic Forum wants to, in essence, be the king of the world. So we didn't want the king of England? Well, then we really shouldn't want the king of the world. Shelley says, my grandson asked why I say boys shouldn't wear colored fingernail polish. I just don't think guys should. It's for girls. What would your answer be if one of your boys asked? Oh boy, that's a tough one. And you're a grandparent. I'm a new parent, not a grandparent yet. I think the best thing that you can, this is tough. The best thing that you could do, I suppose, is tell your children what your beliefs are and what your values are. The tricky one, because you're a grandparent, is, you don't want to jump over the beliefs of your children, the parents of the kids, right? It should come down to what the parents believe. And, so as a grandparent, I guess the first thing is, if I was a grandparent, I would probably check in with my kids before I started talking about my grandkids with that. Because otherwise you're going to have tension between you and your kids, and that's not necessary. My guess is you want to be the grandparent who's around a lot and doing all the stuff, and that's how it is. I would say to that look, generally boys tend to like sports. They like cars. My boys right now love cars. They love cars. They love trucks. They love ambulances. Like, we've got a lot of construction going on here in Florida. So when we take our morning walk every day, basically we can stop at every other house, and there are trucks out there, and there are giant cranes, and they're pouring cement, and we can just sit there and watch, and they absolutely love it. And now we have like a little couple of trucks they can play with. But I don't know. I suppose one day it could come, and there's all the cultural stuff that suddenly they're like, we're into nail polish. My feeling would be that I would try to push, it's hard to talk about in a way, like I would try to push them away from that, or I would explain to them that that's more of a girl's thing. Who knows how they will be once they're over 18, but you have some autonomy to be the adult in their life. I know that probably was a bit of a messy answer, and it's worth thinking about a little bit more. Joe says, any picks on how the NBA playoffs will go? The final four teams are Boston, Indiana, Dallas, and Minnesota. Go Celtics. So look, I'm playing basketball a couple times a week, and everybody is talking about what's going on in the NBA. I just don't watch anymore. You guys know I watch my 80s and 90s games when I'm doing cardio. I don't watch anymore. However, I have heard that the playoffs have been awesome, and there's been a lot of great games, and it's been a lot of fun. I'll probably watch some of the finals. How about that? I'll watch a little bit of the finals. And do you have something to add? You were looking. Who do I got? Who is it? It's Boston. Here we go. We got Boston, Indiana, Minnesota, and Dallas. I can't go for Dallas because Mark Cuban never brought an Asian female onto the team. So sorry, Dallas, you're out. Boston, Minnesota, Indiana, Dallas. Minnesota, I can't do Minnesota. That's Ilhan Omar country. Can't do that. So it's Indiana or Boston. Now, the person who asked the question is from Boston, so that's leaning me towards Boston. Indiana, they're doing all right over there in Indiana. I'll go Boston. We're going to root for Boston here. Yeah, everybody. Wow, you're all nodding. All right, we love the Boston Celtics here. I can do Boston Celtics 1985, right? I could do Larry Bird. I could do Robert Parrish. I could do Kevin McHale. I could do Dennis Johnson. I could do Danny Ainge. Come on, who else can I get from that team? I did Larry Bird. Give me one other guy on that team. Bill Walton was on one of those teams. Give me one more. No, I'm going 80s. He's going Paul Pierce. One more Celtic on those teams. How about, I can feel you guys through the screen. Somebody in Boston screaming about who else was on the 1980s Boston Celtics? Tall black guy. Help me out here. Sam Vincent. He was on the 80s teams? Was Sam Vincent? I think of him as 85. Sam Vincent. He just made up a name. Sam. Yes, we love you, Sam Vincent. He was a tall black guy. Tappy says, how is Clyde handling the boys being older, walking, talking, etc.? Is he uber protective, fearful of his tail being pulled or chewed on, looking for snacks underneath them when he's eating? Well, actually, you hit on a couple of things there. First off, Clyde needs to lose a little weight. Because one thing that when you have a dog and you have kids and they're in the high chairs and they're just, do the best you can to feed them the best stuff you can, and they just knocking food all over the place. It's a beautiful thing to have a dog because you don't have to clean up all the time because he's just a canine vacuum beneath them. But I've had to cut his regular food now because he's just eating food all the time. Or even this morning, I gave Luke half of a hard-boiled egg. Clyde just walks up to him. He just throws it in his mouth. He thinks it's hilarious. So that's one thing. He is incredibly protective over them. If one of them wakes up from a nap and we don't get in there immediately and they're crying, he bolts in there and he'll just sit by the crib with them. Luke is really into pulling his tail, which I'm working on. Fortunately, Clyde is unbelievably sweet, and he's definitely not an alpha, so he doesn't have issues over his own little territory. They both love getting in his bed and just laying there because, kids kind of like dogs. They like sort of like a controlled environment. Like it almost feels like a not covered tent or something in some ways. So he's been really good with them, which is nice. Bethany says, my question, and it's funny when we see other dogs on the street, they always call the other dogs Clyde now. That's their name for dogs. Bethany says, my question is, how important do you think the technical aspects are to growing a show, like expensive cameras, great microphones, etc.? And this doesn't have to be answered on the show, just an earnest question. Do you think consistent content trumps tech? That's a good question. I'd like to think we do both here, that the content is good and that you're watching because you enjoy listening to me and that hopefully it's funny and silly and also you're informed a little bit. But we wanted to make something beautiful, which when I look, I don't know, Connor, if you want to flip around to a couple camera angles right now, like we've tried to make something really, really beautiful here. And we're always fiddling with camera angles. Go to the other side one over here. We just changed this one a little bit. We added some lights. So that's a custom Simpsons thing of me sitting with the Golden Girls made out of Simpsons. You can't, we blur it out a little bit. So that's like one effect you can do. That's that New York Times piece that I'm always talking about where they called me the head of the alt-right. We've changed lighting things. Sometimes we change. Can we do it live right now? Can we alter the colors of the neon bars right now? Watch this. Connor can do almost anything. We go with blue, but occasionally, I think for our interview with Gad Saad we just did the other day, I think we did we do them white with Gad? Or we did a little off color thing. We did blue. But we can fiddle with lights. So we just bought some new cameras. One of the things that we weren't happy with, Connor will get in a second. One of the things that we weren't happy with was that our wide shot, because, we have a limited, look at this. Look at this. We can do purple. What else can we do around here? We can do all sorts of stuff. We can do warm lights and yellow and all that. We weren't that thrilled with our wide shot when I'm sitting with a guest. It was a little too close. So we just bought some new lenses for that. So we're changing that. When you see my interview that we shot 2 days ago with Gad Saad, which is next week, instead of doing the interview just me across from him, we wanted to do something a little more friendly. So we set up the chairs a little bit differently here, and we shot it a little bit differently. So we're constantly trying to do all of that. I was on the front end of the home studio thing. I always tell that story when Tucker Carlson walked into my studio in my garage. Here's the guy that's the #1 host in cable news, making probably 15 mil a year or something like that. And he walks into my garage and his quote was, "Holy fucking shit, you did it." Like, I was like, wow, how cool is that? Like, he's kind of jealous of me. And, he even like, you're doing it the right way. I'm just a sucker, a corporate sucker or something like that. And so I've always felt like if when we do things, let's up the levels and let's make it more beautiful. And who knows how many other studios we'll build and get all the right cameras and everything else. But your question really was, which is more important? I suppose it kind of depends what you're doing. To me, like if you're going to do a show that is political in nature and cultural in nature, and as silly as I like it to be, that it's serious too, I want it to look appropriate. That's why I dress up. I don't do this in t-shirts. Like I could do it in a t-shirt, but I want to look the part and everything else. And then it feels full to me. If you were doing a video game show, I don't know that you would have to do it as professionally, or if you were doing an unboxing show, it all kind of, I think you have to find the right blend between content and production. And if you find that, regardless of whatever vertical you're in, you'll do okay. Jacqueline says, do you have any plans to visit Australia at all? And what advice do you have for an Aussie who wants to move to Florida? Australia is growing worse by the day with racism, hatred, and violence due to the protests, while the government and police continue to not do much other than becoming chickens for KFC. Thanks. I have to say it's really disappointing what's happened in Australia largely, and I get a lot of, I think Australia is our 4th largest audience. Obviously It's US number 1, Canada number 2, UK number 3, and then it's usually Australia and sometimes Sweden number 4, which Sweden is, think how small Sweden is compared to Australia, and they're always jockeying for number 4. I had such a wonderful time for the 10 or so days that I was in Australia with Jordan and performing at the Sydney Opera House, which was our last show together on that original leg of the tour. Was one of the absolute thrills of my life. Beautiful theater. It was our only matinee show on a gorgeous day on that great pier in Sydney. I love the Australians because Australians are they're like Americans on steroids, like the humor, the interaction, the political incorrectness. So to watch the way Australia went so crazy with draconian lockdowns, and now to see some of the Islamist stuff and that you're referring to and all that. So what would I say about an Australian that wants to move to Florida? I would say, good day, mate. Get over here. Figure it out. Figure out. Florida is open for people that love freedom. We're closed for everybody else, right? If you have a progressive friend that wants to move to Florida, it's a very scary place. People are getting eaten by alligators all the time. Where's Brock today? We don't know where Brock is. Could have been eaten by an alligator. You just don't know. If you're a lefty, you should not come here. Anything could happen at any given time, and watch out for that. But if you're a good freedom-loving person, come here, and there is more land to settle. RTR for life says, what is your favorite thing to grow in the garden? Mine is a tie between berries and rhubarb. Hope you're having a good day. God bless y'all. I think we took a couple pictures this morning. I had Joey jump out there and take a couple pictures of the garden. So right now, what you're seeing on the left there, so we've got this mango tree. It's a little early for mangoes, and you can see our mangoes are growing in a really interesting, almost oblong way, as opposed to what you think of as like a sort of more roundish mango, but that's really cool. We love eating mangoes, and in about a month from now, those will be seriously ripe, and we're gonna have hundreds of them, so hundreds or thousands of them probably. But you can see we built a really nice, we've got a little garden table over there, and the team sometimes takes some meetings out there. Obviously some tomatoes, which I've talked about, are tricky to grow in Florida because of the heat and the humidity, so there's only a couple of varieties of tomatoes. We've got some oregano, and I think we've got one other set of pictures, if I'm not mistaken, lemon balm and all sorts of mint. So I've been doing a lot of mint for tea at night, just mint, literally just mint and water. That's it. It's a really nice thing to have before bed. We're doing a lot, I didn't take a picture of it for this one, but we're doing a lot of bok choy. And I love getting the big leaves of bok choy, just freaking chop them up, a little bit of sesame oil, tiny bit of salt and pepper, chop them up. It's absolutely delicious. Just do that on the side of a steak. You don't even need the carb. You're good to go. That is our show for today, guys. Part 2 of my interview with Tom Bilyeu is up right now. You can catch the full thing absolutely ad-free on Locals. We've got a new merch store, or a relaunched merch store at daverubin.store. And we've got a post-game show coming up for you in about 30 seconds. RubinReport.locals.com. Goodbye.
Yeah, it was an intense experience. I just did the work. Watched a lot of retarded people. Spent time with them, observed them. Watched all the retarded stuff they did.
Post game, let's do it. I'm going to be on Newsmax in just a couple of minutes, so we have to be kind of quick here. Shalom says, Connor,